found him," said Butterfield. "Is he mad?" I thought he must have been. I saw his head looking back, turning on shoulders as broad as a bull's. Then, just as quickly, he put his helm over again and came racing toward us. "Heave to!" shouted Butterfield. "Best we let the devil come to us." We turned the dragon into the wind and lashed her wheel. She lay almost dead in the water, scudding sideways as the swells rolled underneath her. The captain and I, like every man aboard, stood by the rail and watched that lifeboat crawl up to weather. Its paint long gone, its seams plugged by scraps of cloth, it looked like a feast for the sea worms. Tangles of weeds trailed in its wake, water slopped in its bilge. But the man who sailed it was bronzed and strong, as though he'd set out just the day before to sail across an ocean. An enormous sea chest of polished wood was jammed between the thwarts. He brought his boat alongside, cast off his sheet, and dropped the tiller. Then he hoisted that great box onto his shoulder and climbed up to the deck of the dragon. "Help him below," said Butterfield. "Give him a meal and a hammock." "Aye, sir," I said. The men scattered as I went forward, the hands to the sails, Abbe to his gun. Only the stranger was left, sitting astride his chest and looking very much at home. His hair was tarred in a pigtail, and though his skin was deeply tanned, his eyes were a very clear blue. "Where have you come from?" I asked. "From the sea," he said, and that was all. He came to his feet, towering above me, and glanced up at the topsail, aft to the stern, everywhere but down at his boat, which wallowed in the swells as we left it behind. I bent to take the man's sea chest, the finest one I'd ever seen. The rope beckets, the handles, were so elaborately knotted that months of work must have passed in their making. The wood glowed with its warm finish of oil, but I grunted at the weight of it. Though stronger than most boys of 17, I couldn't hope to lift that enormous box. The stranger laughed and put it up to his shoulder again. The sound that came from inside it, a rumbling and a clinking, made me think that coins and jewels were nested there. Then he followed me down to the forecastle, where I hung a hammock that he climbed into without a word of thanks. "Would you like some food?" I asked. "Some water?" He shook his head, his eyes already closed. In another moment he was sound asleep, swinging in the canvas as though in the great cocoon of some enormous insect. I found a blanket and covered him, then went up to help Mr. Abbe secure the gun. We stretched the tarpaulin jacket in place and lashed it down. "There you go," said Abbe, stroking at the cloth, smoothing it over the muzzle. "You rest a while." He had a habit of talking to his guns, and it always unnerved me. "That will keep you dry, my handsome little man-eater," he said. He loved his guns, but I despised them. Their weight made the dragon roll badly at times, and only batter through waves she would have hurdled without them. But my father had insisted on arming the dragon, and whether or not to carry guns was the only decision he hadn't left to me. "You're going to the Indies," he'd said. "There's pirates in the Indies." I laughed now to think of that. What a dreadful place the West Indies had seemed from the way father had described them. He'd fill the waters with sharks and wood-eating worms, the sky with hurricanes that blew all the year round, and the islands with swarms of cannibals. "Yes, cannibals," he'd said. "They cook you alive, or so I've heard. They shrink your head to the size of a walnut." But his fear of pirates had been the greatest of all, and he'd paid a fortune for the little 4-pounders that sat on the deck two to a side, with their muzzles pointing over the rail. Then, true to form, he'd found a bargain in the gunner. "Same wages as an ordinary seaman," he'd boasted. "Yet the man was serving in the Navy before you were born." So great was father's love of bargains that he overlooked Mr. Abbey's years, his oddness, even the glass marble fitted in place of his left eye, in a head as round as a cannonball. That marble gleamed crimson now as Abbey looked up from the lashings. The sun was turning red, staining the sails. It lit a blaze right across the horizon, scattering embers of light on the sea. "I don't like the looks of him," he said. "Who?" I asked. "That fellow from the lifeboat. Where did he come from, and where was he bound?" "I'm sure I don't know, Mr. Abbey," I said. "Why was he sailing into the wind?" Abbey tilted his head. "I'd ask him that if I were you, Mr. Spencer. I'd ask him why he was tacking east when he might have run to the west, where the land was closer." "Perhaps you'll ask him yourself," I said. Then I turned away and stood at the rail. "Count on it, Mr. Spencer." I didn't care very much for the gunner. He still sported the rags of his old naval uniform, and seemed to think that his faded gold braid and his little brass buttons made him equal to an admiral. "I'll ask him this as well," he said, coming up to my side. "I'll ask him what he carries in that bureau of his." I laughed. The stranger's sea-chest was enormous, but not quite as big as a bureau. "I think he's a Jonah, maybe," said Abbey. "That's absurd," I said. "Is it? Does he look like a man who's been adrift for weeks?" "Perhaps he hasn't been," I said. Abbey grunted. "But his boat has." I wouldn't admit it to Abbey, but I'd had the same thought. The boat had grown weak, but the man was still strong. "Try it," said Abbey. "Get into a boat and drift out there. In a matter of days the sun turns you into a cinder. In a fortnight it makes a mummy of you, dry as old leather." He spat into the sea. "A man outlive his boat? Not a chance." His one good eye was closed, yet he stared straight at me with the reflected sunset glaring in his glass marble. It was a most disturbing thing, as though he could actually see with some kind of fiery vision. "Look in his sea-chest," said Abbey. "If he's a Jonah, he'll carry his curses in there." "That's enough," I said. Abbey cackled. He turned his head and looked down at the sea. The water seethed below us, and the dragon churned on toward the west. She rushed down a wave, rose on the face of the next. The sun flared once more and disappeared, and Mr. Abbey gasped. He reached out and clutched my arm. "Did you see that?" he cried. "What?" I asked. "Right there!" he shouted. "You must have seen it!" He stretched over the rail, staring straight down at the sea, then aft along the hull. He squeezed shivers of pain into my arm. "Tell me you did!" "See what?" I asked again. "A coffin!" he cried. "It looked like a coffin all nailed together, the lid swinging open." He stared at me with utter horror. "Tell me you saw it!" I tried to shake him off, but his fingers held me like talons. "I saw no such thing," I said. "Then I'm doomed." He let me go and slumped at the rail. "I'm finished. We all are, maybe." "No one's doomed," said I. His glass eye burned. "Oh, we are, young Mr. Spencer. There's a Jonah come aboard." Chapter 2.